We're back with another episode of App Stories. This episode is brought to you by Fitbod. I'm John Voorhees, and with me is Federico Vitici. Hey, Federico.
Hello, John. How are you?
I'm doing really well. I will tell you that my iPhone is an absolute mess. Actually, my iPad's kind of a mess too, because we've been testing a lot of widgets, and I've been I've been taking screenshots of them and testing them. And I don't have a layout on any home screen that's really survived intact. It's actually the home screen on my iPhone is okay. It's that I have a lot of extra pages of random stuff now, and I'm trying to be good about deleting them as I go, because even things that I like that I test, I delete them because I know that, even if I really love a particular app and its widgets, I only have room on my phone for so many of these. I can't have like all 6 varieties that they offer. So I will go back at some point and more thoughtfully create the correct home screens for myself. But right now it's just a little bit of a jumble.
Yeah, mine's an absolute mess. to be honest with you, it's absolutely in a bad place right now. Like the home screen on my phone right now is the bad place. There's multiple pages, some of them which have hidden. Here's a tidbit for people listening. If your iPhone is a mess at the moment and you just need some visual order and clarity for a while, on the home screen, long press the page indicators at the bottom, and that's going to open the grid view with all your home screen pages. And those pages that have checkboxes, you can show and hide specific home screen pages. So if you want to deal with the mess later, but still have some kind of semblance of order and cleanliness right now, you can hide those pages. Now, the problem is not going to go away. This is essentially the equivalent of, sweeping the mess under the rug.
Yeah.
But you're still going to hide them. You can say, hey, I just have one home screen page, when in reality you have 12. But you can do that. You can do that. But yeah, mine's a mess, and the lock screen too. This always happens during review season. I install everything I can find from TestFlight. Then some of those apps go live on the App Store, so I get the App Store version. Some of them remain on TestFlight. I forget to update them to the App Store flavor. And then I got to sit down, and this is probably what I'm going to do over the weekend. I got to sit down and be like, okay, now you wrote about all these examples in your review. What do you actually want to keep on your phone?
Right.
Like what is worth keeping? What do you think is going to be useful to you?
And I will say that one thing about TestFlight, this is, I think I'm a professional complainer about TestFlight now. But one thing I really don't like about TestFlight is that when an app updates, the widgets often just kind of die. They go blank, and you have to first open up the app and go through those 2 screens that TestFlight puts in every single time when you update from TestFlight. And I found myself during this review season doing that over and over and over. There's so many things about TestFlight that are incredibly repetitive that are problematic when you review a lot of apps like we do. There's another one, I guess, would be that there's no search in TestFlight. You got to scroll until you find the one you want, just to make sure you're not publishing a review based on an old version of TestFlight. Because, as we get to these OSs updating, people were updating their apps every several hours in some cases. And so it's a constant stream of that stuff.
Yeah. But that being said, there are some widgets that I know I'm going to keep, and a few things that I want to mention. So I guess I'll start with the obvious, Widgetsmith 5. I wrote about this in my review. You wrote about it on Mac Stories. Widgetsmith version 5 is the interactivity update to Widgetsmith. The developer, a friend of ours, obviously genius of widgets, _ David Smith, put together this update with a collection of widgets that are now interactive. Some of these interactive widgets include a weather forecast that has tabs for switching between different types of forecasts. There's a photo collection widget that allows you to tap through different photos from an album, and you can tap through and the widget is going to animate and show you a different picture. But my favorite one, which is still at the top of my home screen and it's going to stay there, is the new music collection widget, which is basically CoverFlow. If you recall the CoverFlow UI from iTunes and Finder Finder at some point had, I think, a cover flow view mode. It's that. It allows you to pin multiple albums or playlists. You're going to show them as a cover flow collection. You can tap through all those like virtual albums on a virtual shelf, and they're going to animate, and then you can tap the selected one. And the best part is, because those widgets are now interactive, they're also interactive in terms of what they can do with music. Music playback is going to start right there from the home screen. And what's even better is that David added an option for either using the system music player, so the music app, or Widgetsmith's own music player. If you go with the music one, like I did, what's going to happen is that Widgetsmith is going to tell music, start playback for this album or this playlist. As you tap on an album, you're going to see a music activity in the dynamic island. And if you have the music widget on your home screen, that's going to update too. So from one action on the widget, multiple things are going to happen because Widgetsmith talks to the music app. The music app is integrated with the dynamic island and with the obviously the Apple Music home screen widgets, and that's super nice. Like that's become my default way for shuffling a playlist or playing one of my recent obsessions on the home screen, and I love it.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, though. I mean, he's done a lot. David's done an extraordinary amount here, and a lot of it has to do with clever ways of interacting with the widget, because as we've talked about, and I've written about in some of my reviews, there are two ways to interact with a widget. One is a button and one is a toggle. And so you'll find that a lot of people are relying on buttons, and that's what this cover flow style music widget does, because if you tap on the left, you kind of go through the carousel to the left and to the right. You rotate through that way. And in some respects, it's a little counterintuitive because you can't have swipe gestures. So what you'll find is that you might the first time try swiping through those cover flow albums, but you very quickly realize that no, it's just a tap thing, which feels a little off at first, but it's easy to get used to. Another thing that I think is really cool that David did is that with the large widgets, he has an option to either flip them over to a different widget or essentially slide out a drawer with another medium-sized widget contained inside it. So if you picture this as, say, you have a large widget of a photo, a family photo, and you tap on the photo, it slides up and you might see a clock or your calendar. I mean, he's basically combined multiple versions of his widgets into one widget that's interactive, allowing it to either flip over to reveal the second widget or to slide up the photo or whatever it is to see the second widget. And I think that's really super well done.
Yeah. All right. What you got for me, John? What's a widget you're going to keep on your home screen?
I think for me, the one that I'm going to probably use an awful lot is Home Widget. I mean, Home Widget to me is just an amazing app, because this has a lot in common with Widgetsmith in the sense that there is an actual underlying iOS app where you can build your widgets basically. And so what you do is you go into the app and you create grids of, they call them panels, and the panels have tiles on them with different actions for your HomeKit devices. So the widgets themselves look an awful lot like what's available in Home. And because, Home is interactive this year too, Apple's app, you might wonder, why would I want to use Home Widget? And the reason is that Home Widget has a lot more available to it. For instance, if you have dimmable HomeKit lights, there's actually a slider that will appear when you tap on the Home Widget. And instead of swiping it, as I said, you can only tap on these things. You tap along the slider bar and set your dimming that way. You can also set colors for lights that way, which is also very cool. One that I've been using, which I showed you the other day, is that one of the things I don't like about the Home app is that sensor data is still kind of buried. Mm-hmm. So for instance, I have a temperature and humidity sensor on my balcony, and I have other ones that are tied to my thermostats. And it's nice to be able to have a widget where I can just say, oh, This is what the temperature is outside. Here's what it is in the kitchen. Here's what it is, on the third floor in the bedrooms. I can look at that all in one place with one widget and see if, I don't know, maybe the air conditioning broke and it's really hot. I can kind of look at those things and then decide whether I want to adjust the temperatures too. So home widget's one that I'm going to be doing a lot. This episode of App Stories is brought to you by Fitbod. When you want to change your fitness level, it can be really hard to know where to start, and that's why I'm pleased to let you know that Fitbod is an easy and affordable way to build a fitness plan that's just for you. Everyone's fitness path is different. By using a powerful algorithm to learn about you, your goals, and your training ability, Fitbod will create a custom dynamic program based on your experience and any equipment you have. This is all in an app that makes it incredibly easy to learn how to perform each exercise too. Superior results are achieved when a workout is tailored for your unique body, experience, and environment, as well as your goals. Muscles improve when they're working in concert with an entire muscular system, so overworking some muscles while underworking others can negatively impact your results. That's why Fitbod tracks muscle fatigue and recovery to design a well-balanced workout routine. By mixing up muscle groups, exercises, sets, reps, and weight over time, Fitbod serves to increase your overall strength and keep your body sharp. The Fitbod app is easy to use, and with over 1,400 HD video tutorials shot from multiple angles, it makes learning each exercise a breeze. And you can keep track of your achievements and personal bests with Fitbod's progress tracking charts. Fitbod is a really great way to get started with strength training because you know what? I don't know if you're like me, maybe you don't know where to start. I certainly didn't. And Fitbod does a great job of giving you a program designed for your experience level, and you mix things up day to day so you don't get overworked on one muscle group versus another. Plus, I love the videos because they show you exactly how to do the exercises, which is important. Personalized training of this quality can be expensive, but Fitbod is just $12.99 a month or $79.99 per year. But you can get 25% off your membership by signing up at fitbod.me/appstories. So go there today and get your customized fitness plan at fitbod.me/appstories. Once again, that's fitbod.me/appstories for 25% off your membership. Our thanks to Fitbod for the support of the show.
All right, new pick for me. This does something that I've always wanted to have, and finally it's possible. It's a third-party app called Hue Widgets. This is a third-party client for Philips Hue lights, and something that I've always wanted to do was activate Philips Hue scenes from the home screen. Instead, so far I've always had to open the Hue app and trigger, for example, my beloved Savannah sunset scene that I have for my living room that I created from the Hue app. But so far, I've always had to open the Hue app, select my living room, and then trigger the scene. Hue Widgets has been around for a while, and it allowed you to have on-screen widgets for specific Hue scenes. But now, with the iOS 17 update to Hue Widgets, you can trigger these scenes, which, again, these are scenes that do not appear in the Home app, in the Apple Home app. You got to use the Hue system. But now with Hue Widgets, I can trigger those from the home screen. And it's everything I've always wanted to have. Sure, the UI is a little bit bare bones. Like this is a widget with a white background and some plain gray rectangles. But it does what it's supposed to do, which is activate some Philips Hue scenes directly from your home screen. So whether you have a gradient scene or one of the presets from the Philips Hue system, you can now trigger those from the home screen with one tap. And there's no latency, it's immediate, it's perfect.
That's really great. I like that one a lot. Another that I think people ought to think about too and maybe check out is TV Remote, because this is an app that's been a really good app for a while. It basically allows you to program various TVs and use your phone as a controller for your television. I know it works with LG, like modern LG TVs. I think it works with Samsung. There are a bunch of different models. It'll say in the app which ones it works with. And now it's always had widgets that you could use, but now they're interactive. So it's very easy to just do very common things like, adjust the volume or change the input or turn on the TV to begin with. I think this interactive widgets for an app like this make the difference between it being the kind of app that a lot of people would want to use and the kind of app that a handful of really dedicated users will want to use. Because I know that I've used it in the past on and off, but it's never really stuck long term for me because it was always a little bit fiddly because it didn't have that interactive widget. But now with an interactive widget, I think I'm going to be, with review season, I have got to say I haven't been watching a lot of TV the last couple of weeks, but I do plan to sit down and make myself a good interactive widget so that I can handle my my TV that way.
Couple more options about music from me. They're made by the same developer, the developer of Marvis Pro. Obviously, Marvis Pro App of the Year for Mac Stories selects one of our all-time favorite apps at Mac Stories. Both Marvis Pro and the other app by Aditya Rajveer, Widget Pod, they now have interactive now playing widgets for the home screen. Now, you may wonder, why would you want to have a now playing widget from a third-party developer if there's a music widget? Well, first of all, Widget Pod also supports Spotify. So if you don't use Apple Music, you can use Widget Pod as a client for your Spotify music playback. But the thing is, these now playing widgets, they have more controls than the Apple ones. They have skip controls, obviously play and pause, but they also have controls to love a song from the home screen. So again, imagine this scenario. You start playing a playlist or an album on shuffle with Widgetsmith. You see the activity in the dynamic island. Music is playing in the background because Widgetsmith uses the system music player. Then you have the Marvis or Widget Pod now playing widget on the home screen. There's a couple of tricks worth mentioning here. First of all, those widgets, they don't have the same background privileges of the Apple one. What I mean by this is that the Apple one does some private API stuff to always, and by always I mean always, update the song that is shown in the widget. Like you start playing something, you can rest assured the music widget will update in real time. But because widgets for third-party developers are interactive, the developer of Marvis and WidgetPod figured, you know what, I'm going to put a refresh button in the widget. So in case the widget doesn't reload to show you the song that's currently playing, you can just hit a refresh button on the widget and it's going to run in line. It doesn't take you anywhere. It just reloads the widget manually. So you have that. Plus, if you're listening to a song that you really like, you don't have to open the music app anymore to mark it as a favorite. You can just love it with the heart icon from the now playing widget. So if you use Apple Music especially, go check out the widgets for Marvis Pro and Widget Pod. The developer of Marvis Pro now also has a live activities utility called Live Pod. I haven't played around with it yet, but I think we're going to do an episode about live activities. So we're going to save that for another time.
Interesting. I think the refresh button is something I've seen a bunch of developers do, and it's in Home Widget, for instance, because when you have that sensor data, it's not updating live like every minute or anything. So like if I see that on my home screen, I can just hit the refresh button to make sure I'm getting the current temperatures in my house, which is really nice. The other thing I would mention is that I believe one of the coming later features for music is that when you love an album, there would be an automatic loved song playlist created for you, and it may automatically be added to your library. Not entirely clear to me if that last part is true or not. I've always found that the process of adding and loving songs a little cumbersome on Apple Music because there are very few songs that I would want to, give a heart to, but then not also have in my library. And I find myself doing both all the time. And I really hope that we get the ability to kind of do that all in one action at some point. All right. Let's see, what should I mention? Well, I should mention time read because I think that, we started off the episode talking about Widgetsmith, which I wrote about, was the first app that I wrote about. And the second one I wrote about was Timery, because I think these two apps really complement each other in a lot of ways, in that they're very different. But what David Smith has done is he has built an app that really pushes the boundaries of interactive widgets across a really wide spectrum of use cases, because it's photos and it's calendars and weather and music and games and all sorts of stuff. And what Joe Rabar has done is similar but different, because what Joe's done is that he's created an incredibly deep set of widgets for Timery that is so deep, in fact, and customizable that you really can get away with not even using the main app hardly ever if you want. I mean, just to give you an idea, the dashboard widget alone has over 30 different settings that you can set, toggles and various other things that can be set on it. And it is a little overwhelming at times when you first are using it. But once you kind of experiment and figure out what it is about Timery that you want to get out of it in terms of time tracking, you can take those widgets and essentially turn them into it's a subset of Timery that's almost like your own Timery app that only has the stuff that you care about. Because maybe you don't have clients, or maybe you don't have subtasks. There are things about the underlying time tracking service from ToggleTrack that you might not use. And through the widgets, you can actually come up with widgets that just do the things that are important to you. That's certainly how I've approached it. And I've approached it both from kind of I like to have an overview, but I also like to have saved and also recent timers available. What Joe has done is something similar to what David has done, in that you can paginate save timers.
Yes.
So, right. So save timer, a lot of times you might have more save timers than can fit on a particular widget. And so what Joe does is he allows you to set there's an option that allows you to paginate them, so that one of those tiles that would normally show a timer will show controls to move forward and back through the list. So you don't necessarily have to always use the biggest possible widget. If you want to see all of your timers, you can just page through them, which I thought was absolutely super clever and a great way to give people more flexibility in the size of widgets that they can get away with, even if they have a long list of saved or recent timers. The other thing is there's an option to play and pause, and also not just play and pause or stop the timers, but to start them 5 minutes ago, 15 minutes ago, at the end of the last timer you did. All the kinds of things that are already built into the main app already, but you can do them from the widget now. And so it's a really, really nicely implemented and deep app that I think it's one of the best examples of what interactivity can bring to an app that's super focused.
All right, let me close out with another media widget, this time for podcasts. Now, I know there's the podcasts widget is fully interactive now, allows you to play and pause episodes. But hey, what if you don't use the podcast app? My favorite podcast-related widgets that I've seen so far are the Pocket Casts one. I'm a huge fan of Pocket Casts. If I'm not using Apple Podcasts, I'm using the Pocket Casts app because it's got some fantastic audio effects and I really like the interface. And I've always found it clear to use. The queue is not confusing. The approach to playlists and filters makes sense to me. Now Pocket Casts, which sometimes I forget it is owned by Automatic, the company behind WordPress, which also owns Day One. I always forget these things. But yeah, the Pocket Casts now has interactive widgets that are perfect. You can choose a small one that shows you one episode at a time, or you can choose the medium one that shows you more episodes in your queue. Play and pause, supports all the effects that you configured in the app. It does what it needs to do. If you don't use podcasts, go check out the Pocket Casts one. Updated on day one for iOS 17, which is always nice to see from a big company like Automatic. So yeah, that's another recommendation.
All right. Well, I'm going to close out with Widgel because I wrote about this one the other day. It's a simple game widget thing. It's like interactive widgets means you can play games on your home screen now too. Now, these are very simple games. There's like a tile slide puzzle. There's a maze. There's like a lights out style game. They're very, very simple. I think it's really cool the way that it has been made to work with photos. So you can use any of your photos in your photo collection to create these puzzles. And as you do things like a matching game or the slide puzzle, you're putting together your photo. And I think that I'm not sure this one's going to stay on my home screen long term, but it's a neat novelty and interesting idea as a way of when there's a game that really just requires kind of asynchronous tapping that you don't have to, it's not twitchy or anything like that, which is what puzzle games typically are. It can work really well. And I had fun playing with that one before I wrote about it.
Very nice.
All right, Federico, that's it for this week. We'll be back in another week, and this time we will be back with macOS. Talk a little bit about Sonoma. I want to thank our sponsor for this week. That was Fitbod. You can find me and Federico over at macstories.net. Federico is on Mastodon. Just go to vitici.macstories.net. I'm there too. Just go to johnvorhees.macstories.net. And we're on Instagram, where Federico is at Vitici. That's VITICCI. And I'm at John Voorhees. JOHNVOORHEES. Talk to you next week, Federico.
Ciao, John.